We stand today in a world built by machines, but less than 3 centuries ago, the rhythm of life was dictated by the rising sun and the strength of human muscle. Then a transformation occurred, a shift so profound it ruptured history itself. This is the story of the Industrial Revolution and the force that drove it. Steam power. It was the engine that changed the world, turning rural landscapes into smoking giants and forging the modern era in fire and water. Before the smokestacks rose, manufacturing was a quiet domestic affair known as the cottage industry system. Ordinary people produced goods by hand in their own homes, relying entirely on muscle power, wind, or water. This created severe energy limitations. To produce anything on a larger scale, early factories had to be tethered to rushing rivers to harness water power, strictly limiting where industry could grow. The spark for innovation didn't come from textiles, but from the depths of the earth, the mining problem. Britain faced a scarcity of wood, making coal essential for heating and energy. However, as miners dug deeper for this black gold, the mines flooded with groundwater. The existing solutions were primitive. Using muscle power to haul buckets of water was far too slow to drain the mines effectively. Enter Thomas Newcomen. In 1712, he introduced the first attempt at a mechanical solution, the atmospheric engine. It worked by using steam to create a vacuum, allowing atmospheric pressure to push a piston down. While it succeeded in its primary purpose, pumping water from coal mines, it had a fatal flaw. It consumed massive amounts of coal to operate, making it incredibly inefficient and expensive to run. The true revolution began in 1765 with a Scottish instrument maker named James Watt. He realized that cooling the entire cylinder to condense the steam was a waste of energy. His revolutionary innovation was the separate condenser. This allowed the main cylinder to stay hot while the steam condensed in a separate chamber. The result was dramatic. Watt's engine achieved 4 times more efficiency than Newcomen's original design, changing the economics of power forever. Watt didn't stop at efficiency. Early engines were limited to simple vertical motion, up and down, useful only for pumping. To power a factory, he needed circular movement. Watt developed the sun and planet gear, an innovation that converted that vertical piston stroke into continuous rotational motion. Suddenly, steam engines weren't just pumps. They could turn wheels, belts, and gears, ready to power complex industrial machinery. The first industry to be completely transformed was textiles. With Watt's engine, steam replaced water wheels. This meant factories no longer needed to be built on riverbanks. They could be constructed anywhere. Cotton mills became the pioneering industry to fully adopt this technology, powering looms and spinning mules tirelessly, day and night. This technological shift created a new social structure, the factory system. Work was no longer done at home. It was centralized in massive production sites. This brought rigid industrial schedules, where workers lived by the ringing of bells, strict timetables, and shift work. However, it also sparked a mass production revolution, dramatically reducing costs and making goods like clothing affordable for the masses for the first time. Steam power soon moved from the factory floor to the open road. In 1804, Richard Trevithick built the first working steam locomotive for rail transport, but it was George Stephenson's rocket in 1829 that captured the world's imagination. By perfecting the design and achieving speeds of 24 miles per hour, the rocket triggered a phenomenon known as railway mania. By 1850, the railway system had enmeshed Great Britain. This network caused a profound economic transformation, drastically reducing shipping costs and creating thousands of new jobs. It connected rural areas to cities, allowing for the transport of fresh food. It even changed how we measure the day. Time standardization became necessary to coordinate complex railway schedules, giving birth to the time zones we use today. The revolution also conquered the waves. In 1807, Robert Fulton's Clermont proved that steam-powered water transport was commercially viable, freeing ships from the whims of the wind. This led to a global trade revolution. Reliable, steam-powered transatlantic travel became possible, drastically reducing the time it took to voyage between continents and shrinking the globe. As factories clustered near coal sources and iron hubs, a wave of urbanization swept the land. Manchester, for example, exploded from a town of 45,000 in 1760 to a metropolis of 300,000 by 1850. This was driven by mass migration, as people flooded in from farms faster than the cities could build infrastructure to house them. Progress came at a heavy price. The environment suffered devastating consequences. Cities were blanketed in thick coal smoke and soot, creating the infamous London fog. The pollution extended to the water and soil, as rivers like the Thames became toxic cesspools and acid rain began to damage agriculture in the countryside. Inside the factories, the reality was grim. Working conditions were perilous. Workers endured grueling work hours, often laboring for 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, just to keep pace with the tireless steam machines. The environments were hazardous, filled with the dangers of exploding boilers, exposed severing gears, and unbearable heat and noise. Perhaps the most tragic aspect was child labor. Children were subjected to exploitative practices, sent to clean underneath dangerous moving machines, or work in tight, suffocating mine shafts for pennies. It took decades for moral outrage to catch up with profits. Eventually, legislation like the Factory Acts of 1833 was passed to limit child labor in these industrial settings. The steam engine didn't just churn out products, it churned out new social classes. The power of traditional landowners faded as the industrial bourgeoisie rose, a new middle class of factory owners and bankers. Simultaneously, the industrial proletariat emerged, a massive working class dependent on wages. This divide set the stage for the shift to laissez-faire capitalism. The power of steam fueled global dominance. Imperialism was supercharged by industrial technology. Steam-powered gunboats, like the iron-hulled Nemesis, dominated naval warfare against less advanced fleets. These vessels enabled colonial expansion, allowing European powers to navigate up African and Asian rivers to colonize the interior and extract the raw materials their factories hungered for. Steam was only the beginning. By the late 1800s, the Second Industrial Revolution arrived. The steel era began with the Bessemer process, making steel affordable enough to build stronger engines and railways. Steam eventually paved the way for electrical power and the internal combustion engine, technologies that would eventually challenge steam's dominance. Despite the hardships, the long-term effects brought profound progress. Standards of living eventually rose as mass production filled homes with cheaper consumer goods. An innovation culture took root, where technological advancement became the expectation. Furthermore, the struggle of the factories birthed workers' rights, leading to the growth of labor unions that secured better conditions for future generations. Today, we live in the Anthropocene era, an age defined by human impact, a reality that began with the first puff of coal smoke. The legacy of steam is the foundation of modernity. It liberated humanity from the limits of muscle power and collapsed the distance between us through transportation. The steam engine was more than a machine. It was the key that unlocked the modern world.